Good morning, class. Today we will discuss the process of speech mechanism. But before we start, we need to understand what language is all about. A language in the simplest form can be defined as a set of signals that enables human being to communicate. Does it mean that only human communicates? Possibly there are a few other species. Those have an elaborate communication system. For example, bees can communicate about the location of honey. Jackals can use vocal signals to warn of danger and food. Or dolphins can also use signals in order to indicate danger or food. At the same time, you must have noticed that a parrot can sing or produce human words or phrases. We definitely understand what a parrot produces. However, the question is whether a parrot actually understands human language. It is intelligent enough to possibly replicate some of the sounds or words produced by human being, but not all. It has limited sets of vocabularies, possibly. Those are mastered by training. But if you look at the larger picture, a parrot possibly doesn't have the cognitive ability to understand human languages. So the human communication system is basically way too advanced than other animal communication. Have you wondered what happens when you encounter a foreign language that you do not understand or that you are not familiar with? Have you ever felt that when a person speaks a language that you do not understand, seems to be very fast while speaking to you? Why does it happen? It happens because possibly you can identify some of the sounds produced by the speaker even though you don't understand the language, but then the structure, the combination of those sounds are rather different. Those are available in your language. So language therefore is a two-way process. It has a production part that is associated with sounds and their meaning, and there is a perception part that is associated with the meaning and symbols. Now, when you talk about production, that is from a speaker's point of view, it requires two complex processes. What are those? For example, if I have to say a simple expression like, "What a lovely day." See, this simple expression requires some multiple or complex mechanisms. I need to send, first of all, it requires my thinking about the expression. So what happens, I would process the idea in my brain. That's my psychological aspect as a speaker. So in accordance with that psychological aspect, my brain will send signal to my vocal apparatus to produce some noises. Those actually in turn will mean what I wanted to say. So from psychological to physiological. Physiological because my vocal organs would be involved in order to produce those expressions. Now try to understand it from a hearer's point of view. What will a hearer do? A hearer will first receive the signal. How? Through the sensory auditory, right? So it will receive the signal, and then the signal will be sent to brain in order to decode the noises. So from a hearer's point of view, it is first a physiological process. Since the auditory organs are in action in order to receive the signal, then the brain tries to decode those signals. So that is our psychological aspect. So speaking or the production of language also requires perception or equal perception. It would be a successful communication only if both the speaker and the hearer understand the codes associated in producing those speech sounds, right? Okay. Phonetics and phonology are two core branches of linguistic sciences. Those deal with speech sounds. Now, how do you understand the differences between phonetics and phonology? Phonetics and phonology are possibly like closely interrelated, yet there are certain differences that we can notice. First of all, phonetics is concerned with the characteristics of human sound making, especially those are used in speech, and provides methods for their description, classification, and transcription. So phonetics try to understand speech sounds from three different perspectives. First one is articulatory phonetics, that tries to understand the way speech sounds are being produced using different articulators. Next one is acoustic phonetics, that tries to quantify speech sounds. So that involves measuring or quantification of different speech sounds. For example, how a consonant or a vowel is different from another consonant or another vowel, and it tries to see the speech signal, it tries to analyze speech signals, tries to understand the pitch, duration, and all those things. And then the final one is auditory phonetics. This tries to understand speech from a hearer's point of view, that is, what are the mechanisms involved in understanding or decoding speech signals. Phonology, on the other hand, is concerned with the way sounds are organized in a particular language. Its primary function is to apprehend the cognitive system dealing with grammatical rules. That is to say, how you can combine two different speech sounds or multiple speech sounds together in order to form syllable or a word, or how or what are the possible combinations allowed in a given language. For example, I cannot start a word with ng sound in English. So ng sound, which is a velar, voiced velar nasal sound, right? So what we can see, the production of this sound could be seen in the final sound of the word king, but in English, doesn't occur in word initial position. Phonetics basically deals with the concrete or actual physical sounds. It examines the physical and acoustic properties of those speech signals. Human beings are capable of producing an infinite set of sounds. However, if you notice closely, only handful number of those sounds are used in actual communication. So, in a given language, there are limited number of sounds, those are used for actual communication, and then those number or that sets would be also different even from a very close related language, right? That's how you identify or differentiate different languages. Phonology helps us to understand how these small sets of sounds out of those infinite numbers are selected and organized in a given language. So basically phonology is concerned with the distribution, variations, and grouping of speech sounds of specific languages, right? Now let us focus on the actual topic, that is speech mechanisms. As you have already understood that our ears are very sensitive and are capable of distinguishing various speech sounds. So it can distinguish easily a dog's barking from a bird's chirping, or if somebody is talking to you nicely, or if somebody is rude to you, or if it is a voice of a male or a female or a child. So or if it is a beating of a drum, or somebody is playing a guitar, you can distinguish different sorts of sounds, right? Now the question is, how is speech sound produced? See, I have mentioned about different sorts of sounds, but now we are trying to focus specifically on speech sounds. The question is, how is speech sound produced and processed in real time? Now I, as a speaker, is speaking something to you, you as a hearer also perceiving the same thing at the actual time. Now how this process is happening, how is it so faster, how is it computed in our brain? Now as I said in the beginning that as a speaker I'm just releasing certain noises, right? So those noises must have a source. We'll shortly get into know what that source is all about. Now when I release those sources are given a shape or proper shape when it is coming out all the way and being released either through my oral cavity, that is through my mouth, or through my nasal cavity, that is through my nostrils, right? Then there are combinations of different sounds together, which we call as syllable or words. Syllables are formed together to combine words, right? Sorry, syllables are combined together to form words. Now, words are again combined together to form phrases or sentences, and then that's how we communicate. When I talk about production, as I said, that the noise that comes out from a source and gets its shape while being released, right, are actually different from each other. So language has always been a highly complicated and systematic and structured event. It is highly complicated or structured or systematic because if you recall the example that I gave you about what a lovely day, you see it requires possible combination of all the required sounds together, and then all those sounds or words are formed again in actual sequence in order to give the proper sequence or proper meaning. I cannot say lovely day that is, or what day lovely is, right? I need to arrange each of the words or each of the sound sequences in proper order in order to give the actual or total meaning of it. Now, production of speech from the point of speaker is dependent on both psychological as well as physiological aspect, as I have already mentioned. It is first formed in the brain, and then the brain sends signal, and we keep on producing those sounds. From hearer's point of view, it is physiological to psychological because the hearer receives the signal, and then the decoding is done in the brain. Now, how shall we approach speech sounds? As I said, out of so many numbers of sounds that we are capable of producing are not always useful in case of language. Language uses only a handful of those speech sounds, and those are combined in a systematic manner. So, production of speech sounds requires equal level of understanding or perceiving those signals. If I don't follow or receive a particular signal or speech sounds, I won't be able to produce that particular sounds either, right? Now, have you ever wondered how do you easily identify your favorite singer's voice, or distinguish if a person is talking to you so nicely or the person is being rude to you, right? You must employ or adopt certain mechanism, right? So what is that mechanism? The mechanism is that our ears are capable of transmitting exact pitch ranges. What do I mean by that pitch range? So that pitch range is about a particular person's identity that is dependent on, again, the shape and the size of the vocal cords, right? And those particular pitch differences or pitch ranges are stored in our brain. Speaking can thus be compared with singing. There is tempo, there is rhythm, and there is pitch. These are all vital, very vital for speech production. You will also notice that when you talk, basically you take turns, right? You speak, you listen, and then you talk again. You stop because other person also needs to talk. That's how you communicate. In a face-to-face conversation, you always take turn, unless and until it is a kind of monologue, like right now I'm delivering my lecture, so you are just listening, I'm just talking. But at the same time, if you have any queries, I need to stop in order to understand what your query is all about, and then possibly I can answer, right? In the same way, a child also starts a language with babbling or cooing, and eventually starts producing sequence of sounds. Those are meaningful. Now, if you have to believe the research says, so the understanding of language starts in the womb itself. The baby starts understanding or differentiating different sounds while in the womb, right? So it keeps on capturing various speech signals while it is still in the womb. Of course, it doesn't understand much of those signals. Possibly when it is in the womb, it just differentiates between pleasant and unpleasant sounds. That's all. When you talk about organs of speech, as I said, production of speech sounds requires a constant source of energy. Now, what is this energy? That energy is possibly, you can link with like the way we release air, right? So what is the source of air in case of our languages like say English, or like some of the Indian languages like Bangla or Assamese or Hindi? How do you produce language? See, you produce language while you exhale, you release air. So what is the source of that air? That source of the air is your lung, basically, right? So from the lungs, you try to pump out the air. When you pump out the air, you try to produce your language, right? So it's a physiological phenomena that requires active involvement of some specific organs, and then the organs are called as articulators. Why it is called articulators? Why these are called articulators? Because these help in articulation of speech sounds. So articulators can be of two types, depending on their nature: flexibility or involvement in speech production. These are called active articulators and passive articulators. Active articulators are those which are movable, basically flexible, right? So if you try to figure out your respiratory system, that is those organs which are also involved in like inhaling or exhaling, or when you take food, like the organs those are involved in chewing or swallowing your food, those are the organs also those are the organs those are useful in speech production. So which are the organs which are movable? For example, the lower portion of your jaws, the lips, various parts of the tongue, right? These are highly movable, so these are called active articulators. The other ones which are not so movable, for example, the roof of the mouth, so your hard palate, that is the bony part right after your front teeth, right? So, and then the remaining portion, right, those are non-movable, so these are called passive articulators. Now let us try to understand or look at the various organs those are responsible in producing speech sounds. First one is lungs. As I said, the lungs is the usual source of your energy. You try to produce any particular word while you exhale, as I already told, right? Because in case of English, for example, we speak while exhaling speech sounds. That's why it is called aggressive airstream mechanism. There are certain languages, very few languages, where language is produced while inhaling, okay, the air inside. Those are called ingressive airstream mechanism. For us, possibly it is very difficult even to try to produce language while inhaling air, right? So it's a normal process for us to keep on pumping out the carbon dioxide, right, CO2, while we exhale, and keep on inhaling oxygen, right? It's a continuous process and we keep on doing it unconsciously, right? Now, the lungs, basically the utterances that we make are basically controlled by the physiological limitations of our lungs, and by the muscles, those control the actions of the lungs. After lungs, the important organs are the larynx and the vocal folds. So the larynx basically are situated right after the lungs. So the sound that is, or the noise or the air that is pumped out from the lungs requires systematic and like prolonged modification when it goes up. So from lungs it comes out in the trachea region, and slowly it moves into the buccal cord or buccal fold region, where it gets shapes, different shapes. So there are different chambers, right? In the diagram, you can see like various portions of the larynx. It has trachea region, then cricothyroid cartilage, and then all the way you will have glottis and epiglottis regions, right? So the buccal folds are basically flexible muscles made of membrane, mucous membrane, and are located on both sides of the superior portion of the larynx, right? These two folds, elastic tissues may be closed or parted apart, causing a sensation or what we call as vibration associated with voiced sounds. So when it vibrates, we call the sounds as a voiced sound. When it doesn't, we call it as a voiceless sound. For example, when you produce something like b, if you place your palm in your buccal folds somewhere there, you'll feel a sensation, right? Because it is a voiced sound. When you say p, you don't feel the sensation. However, see, in normal occurrences, when you say p, you see p is associated with a vowel. If you say just p, if you cut the vowel part there, you won't feel the sensation, right? Because p, the production of p doesn't require the buccal folds to be tensed. That's why it is called voiceless one. Depending upon the size, or rather you can say the size of the buccal cord, okay, buccal folds keeps on changing depending upon gender and age. When a person grows up, okay, the size of the buccal fold also increases. That's the reason the grown-up adult male, okay, a grown-up adult male has least pitch range or fundamental frequency than a grown-up female adult, and then the child basically, because the size of the buccal fold of a child is very small, it's very narrow, that's why their F0 range is very high. Some statistical information. For example, for a grown-up adult female, the size is around 11 to 16 centimeter. The size of the buccal fold is around 11 to 16 centimeter for a grown-up adult female. That for a grown-up male is around 17 to 22 centimeter. The space between this buccal fold are called glottis. Okay, the primary function of the buccal fold is to prevent any object that may prevent the air circulation in the lungs. Now, humans manipulate the opening and the closing of the buccal folds in order to produce a wide range of speech sounds, right? The next one is the pharynx. Pharynx is basically a long tube. It is around, say, 7 to 8 centimeter for female and male respectively. It is located just above the larynx. Now, the airstream that is released from the lungs, and when it reaches the pharynx region, it is modified following the shape of the upper cavities, all right? So, the upper portion of your mouth. Now, and whether the air is released through the oral cavity or the nasal cavity. Now, that release is dependent on the next organ that is called velum. Now, what do I mean by whether it is released by oral cavity or the nasal cavity? You see, we have two openings. We can release our air through our mouth, right? That is the oral cavity, or through our nostrils as well, right? Now, the next important organ is the velum, or we also call it as soft palate, okay? Soft palate. So, the fleshy part basically, if you take your tongue towards the back part, you will feel the fleshy part. Now, the velum, along with various other parts of the tongue, the lips, and to some extent the lower jaw, are considered as the active articulators. Why it is called active articulators? Because it is flexible, it is movable, right? That's why it can actively participate in the production of speech sounds. Now, when the velum is lowered, okay, it causes some sort of restrictions in the oral cavity, and the air that is released from the lungs is forced to be released through our nasal cavity, through our nostrils. That's how we produce our nasal sounds. What are the nasal sounds? For example, say ma. When you say ma, you see part of your oral cavity is being closed and the air is ultimately released through your nostrils. So the words, like the sound in the sound ma as in man or mango, or in our language like ma, right? So the initial sound where the air is released through our nostrils are called nasal sound. And if it is raised, what is raised? If the velum is raised, then the air can pass through our oral cavities, and that's how we produce the oral sounds. For example, sounds like p, b, t, d, k, g, right? Or all the vowel sounds like a, e, u. So your mouth is wide open and then the air gets released through your oral cavities. That's why these are called oral sounds. Most of the languages, okay, or for example, the vowels in most of the languages are produced orally. However, there are a few languages where you have distinctions between oral vowels versus nasal vowels. For example, in case of Bangla, you have both oral vowels as well as nasal vowels, right? So for example, if we say tar as in his, to refer someone who is inferior to you, the vowel produced there is a, which is oral. But we say when you have to show your respect to an elderly person and use the same term as in nar, so you can also feel the sensation of this nasality, right? So when I have to refer to an elderly person as tar, right, there the vowel a is produced with a nasal, nasality in it, right? Now, the next important organs are the hard palate and then the alveolar ridge. Now, this alveolar ridge or the hard palate, you can feel actually. This starts right after the portion where your upper front teeth, so upper teeth is ending. So if you place your tongue there, you can feel the bony part, right? The hard, or strong part right after your upper teeth, upper front teeth, right? So that is your alveolar region. When your tongue comes in contact with the alveolar region, we call those as alveolar sounds, right? For example, t, when you say t, as in say talk, sar in Bangla, or d as in duck or dhak, right? As in dhak meaning in Bangla means drum. So your front portion of the tongue comes in contact with the alveolar region. That's why these are called alveolar sounds. The next few important organs are the tongue, the lips, and the teeth. These are also the major articulators, especially the various portions of tongue and the lips. The involvement of both the lips produce labial sounds, okay, or also called as bilabial sound. So for example, when you try to produce something like pa or ba, right, as in parrot or book, the English words, right? So when you have to produce something like pa or ba, what happens? Your lower lips goes against the upper lip, right? And that's how you produce the sound. That's why these are called bilabial sounds. Or for example, when you say ma, right? The production of ma is also done with the help of both the lips, right? Now, both the lips are often used to produce labial consonants, all right? Participations of various portion of the tongue is associated with the production of vowel sounds. For example, the tip of the tongue or the blade of the tongue or the front, back or the root of the tongue, like the involvement of those various portions are also associated in defining different types of vowels, right? So we call like front vowels or back vowels, right? Or high vowels or low vowels. Which are the high vowels? When you raise the when you say E, for example, your tongue is raised, versus when you say A, it goes down. So E or U are high vowels when compared to when you say A, where you tongue goes down, are called low vowels, right? Now, the third portion is another important aspect, or the importance of teeth. You can observe, especially in case of elderly people, because they don't have teeth, especially the upper front teeth, they fail to produce a lot of the sounds. Similar things you can also observe in case of child. When a child keeps on growing up, initial few sounds you will feel that those are not produced properly. As soon as the child grows up and he gains all the teeth, most of other speech organs are also possibly grows up in a proper shape, only then a child starts speaking in a proper form, right? So elderly people without the front teeth often struggle to speak, right? Now the involvements of tongue and the upper front teeth produce the labiodental and dental consonants. So for example, the, right? The or the. How do you say the or the? So the word like say tali, clapping, in tali in Bangla meaning clap, right? So how do you say? You take the upper or the front portion of your tongue in contact with the upper front teeth, as in ta, right? Or in English word like thank you or then, right? You need to take the tongue out, and then the front part of the tongue touches your upper front teeth. That's how you produce. So these are called dental sounds. Similarly, if your tongue touches the alveolar region, as I have given examples earlier also, t or d, right? The production of the sounds like t or d, where the tongue touches the alveolar region, are called alveolar sounds. We are almost at the end of this lecture. Now you can just focus on this diagram. You can see the cavity region. So the nasal cavity, you can see, right? If you block, if you lower your velum, your oral cavity is blocked, and the air is released through your nasal cavity, as you can see in the diagram there. And there are various others, like articulators are also shown in the diagram. So you have trachea region, you have buccal fold, you have the jaws, the hard palate, the nasal cavity, the velum, and then the epiglottis. So all these organs together help us to produce speech sounds. As I have also mentioned that it is possible to quantify speech sound. Generally, when you talk, do you see the speech sounds, or do you see the way you are hearing? The speech sounds are apparently not visible, but you can use different, say, softwares, different platforms are available. So things like, you can use a software like Praat, where you just need to record your speech sounds, and you can test the wave signals. You can quantify your speech sounds. You can employ different acoustic components in order to measure, say, the properties of vowels or even different speech consonants, right? So quantification is also possible. Apparently you do not see speech signals, but then it is possible to view those things if you record it and use any software and try to view the waveforms. Thank you. These are some of the references that I want you to go through try to read some of those books or the papers. Please come back if you have further questions. Thank you.